Hello guys, my name is Kaushik and today my AAT topic is about pondering variables and direct instructions in compiler design. So what is an introduction? So what is a variable? The name of a value. What is an attribute? The name of a property. These are the working definitions that most of us find adequate in daily life and daily computer science. To consider whether there is more to it is to consider an ontology, the ontology of a variable. Is there a good comprehensive definition of variable for students and laypersons? So first, however, let's address the subject that arises prominently where variables meet worldly ontology, the professional design of an ontology for some real thing in some domain driven by commercial need to capture some enterprise in a database. The question is, what do we need to keep track of? To answer that question, there's money in it. Requires extensive knowledge of some real-world arena of activity, such as suing or collateralized debt obligations or military deployments or Bordeaux wines, for along with the skills to represent that knowledge in some data. Working under the entity relationship model, an expert would elicit and record the entity's attributes and relationships that need to be exposed in the domains. The principles of working ontology is a subject taken up by several philosophers of computing. The goal is often knowledge representation and sharing, and the objective is often organizational. Barry Smith and fellow researchers combine the abstract or formal with the domain specific. Basic formal ontology provides templates and tools as in engineering and addresses philosophical questions arising from those practices. Rising from those practices, that's not what we're talking about. The question of interest here, there's money in it. There's no money in it. Requires probing into the nature of that workhorse abstraction, the variable. We look not to the fine-grained level of a distinction that makes a difference, but to the level of identifiers with associated values. Quinn says that to be is to be the value of a bounded variable, an intriguing notion, but not the informal exploitation we seek. We want to articulate toward a comprehensive definition the ontology of a variable as it is used in computer programming. We mutter what's in the variable for the tax rate, or that variable has misleading name, or we don't need a variable for month because that's a function of the date. The ontology of something that is used so relentlessly in computing must have something to tell us about computing. Let's consider several questions that may provide direction. If a variable is the name of a value, what about a constant? The distinction is easy to explain in programming, but not so easy outside of it. Is a constant special case of where some extra property, mutability, attaches to the var object? And what about the attribute of database design? What is that? Does attribute break down in where and constants? William Kent raised this question of the ontology of the attribute in 1978, noted its peskiness, and concluded there is really no difference between an attribute and a relationship. What is the difference between a variable and a value? Is a variable a thing or some property of a thing? To say we don't need a variable for the month is to say the value. If a variable is the name of a value, what about a constant? The distinction is easy to explain in programming, but not so easy outside of it. Is constant a special case of where extra property, mutability, attaches? Can be derived elsewhere because variables go away when values are substituted. A common view of a variable is as a placeholder. What is it holding a place for? For a predicate, for a proposition, or for an entity? In other words, what is the shape of category of a variable? Is it an attribute of something, a whole statement about something, or the something itself? Again, in a program, this is clear. The difference between variable and value is embedded firmly in the process. What about the multiple instantiations? The fact that all the occurrences of a variable are bound to the same value. To say that variable has a misleading name is to condemn several substrings of code. How would we include that aspect in a comprehensive definition? Is a variable something we know or something we don't know? An algebraic definition of a variable is as unknown, yet we know a lot about a variable x that appears in an equation such as f of x is equal to ax square plus bx plus c. We know that it is an object suitable for such a setting, that is a number, and that it belongs right there, and its value is constrained by the given relations to the other values. What's unknown is which number. We always know the variable in the rather weak sense that we grasp its need and purpose. In a program, a variable value is something that we don't know in the source code, the human product. In the execution, as soon as it's bound, the value is known in some sense, but to what or whom? How would we teaching directly? The obvious answer is the programming language, but there is a good bit of evidence that students do not learn the syntax and semantics of program directly. Kelly Rivers had a paper at ICER 2016 that I found fascinating. She studied how students learned programming structures and found that they didn't. They actually made some errors with for loops over the course of the semester. Of course, the students were learning, but you can't measure the learning in terms of syntax and semantics of programming. They learned something else. Elliot Soloway and Jim Forer argued back in the 1980s that students don't learn programming in terms of syntax and semantics. Rather, students were learning plans, useful chunks of code. Within those chunks were programming statements, but students were learning that set of statements, not the individual statements. Maybe we should be teaching those plans. John Sweller argues we should be teaching programming with lots of worked examples. He argues that too much emphasis on problem solving leads to increased cognitive load, which interferes with learning. Worked examples are completely worked out programs that students study, typically including questions that students answer about the program. The worked example effect describes how worked examples lead to better learning than more problem solving. For Sveller, worked examples are part of effective direct instruction for programming. I'm a follower researcher. I'm a follower of the research Herman citing in her blog post and agree that direct instruction is better than discovery learning for introductory courses. We are still figuring out what direct instruction means in learning to program. I do not think it is about programming languages. I expect that it is more about plans, that the method should involve worked examples. Thank you.